Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I actually just got a brand new memory card for my phone, so I'm sort of testing out my phone right now. I thought I'd give you a people update on how I'm doing. I'm not doing too bad. Mental health is reasonably okay, which is the main thing most of the time. What have I been doing with myself lately? I've mainly been fixing machines a lot. I've been doing a lot of that, and I don't know. I've just been mucking around with stuff when I'm bored, creating my own little projects and stuff to work on. In between that, watching a lot of Netflix, definitely. Uh, Aside from a lot of Netflix and staying locked down at the moment, which is lockdown is a bit of a pain in the ass, to be honest. I really don't like it because I can't do the gym anymore, and I can't do yoga either, which is kind of fucking annoying. I've been walking my dog pretty regularly, doing a long, or pretty much a nice long walk if I can. In between doing those nice long walks, what else? Using my weights, which I've got down right down here underneath my bed at the moment. I've mainly just been trying to keep myself as busy as possible, really. I mean, that's pretty much what I've been trying to do. Do everything the right way, I guess, or at least trying to keep my head on straight for the most part. Dealing out stuff with my therapist and dealing with stuff in my life. Dealing with the fact that somebody tried to hack my Facebook. Not too concerned about that, to be honest, because I fixed that anyway. I've rotated the password several times now. And not just that, I've also added second layers of security at the same time, so it's always a plus side to do that, definitely. As you may have noticed, I am recording on my phone. The reason that I'm recording on my phone is because I've now got a 128 gigabyte memory card on my phone. So I thought I'd test it out and see how well it works. And not just that, I want to see how well things are going to work with this memory card, and not just that, how good the photos are going to look. I'm also going to see if I can do 4K video using my phone, if I want to do 4K video specifically. I'm kind of tired at the moment because I haven't been to bed. So I kind of do that. Like, I fucking swear. I get fucking annoyed with myself for fucking doing that, or not getting enough fucking sleep sometimes. My sleep hygiene is fucking terrible. What else have I been doing? Keeping my mental health in check for the most part. Not dealing with troll stuff anymore, so I'm not really dealing with that anymore. Doing eBay for my dad, helping my sister out with her business, getting an average of 5 or 6 clients over a period of time, which has been good. I've been averaging per week 5 or 6 clients. And then it sort of died down after that. But I think it's just because of the initial corona thing. Everybody was concerned about the coronavirus and stuff, and they were just, kind of fucking concerned about shit. So I'm like, all right, fuck it. What else have I been doing with myself? Keeping busy, basically, and keeping myself from being too bored with some of the shit that goes on, with this coronavirus stuff. Because I was doing a regular activity day for myself. Pretty much go out, would play pool or go bowling, 10-pin bowling, or I'd do something to that effect. Or I'd go to the club or the pub or something like that, effectively. Can't do those activities anymore because unfortunately I don't have access to them anymore, but... So I've been, pretty much just keeping myself as busy as possible. I've got a laptop out there that I'm working on at the moment. Actually, I've got 2 laptops, but the other one I'm not sure whether I'm just going to strip down parts or whether I'm going to reuse it for something. As it's a single core laptop, so yeah. Actually, you know what? I might do a bit of a tutorial on taking apart things. Definitely a good way to do it. So let me just go and grab a bit of an anti-static mat or something. I can just mark some things. I'll show you how to do things. Not that I know of. I haven't checked PayPal for a while, but I'm pretty sure it hasn't paid yet. I would have got a notification on my phone, Dad. So laptop, right? Let's grab this. I'm just going to grab a screwdriver set for a second. Right. Okay, I just want to grab. Actually, you know what I'll do? Got some anti-static bands in here. So I'll grab some of these out. Use these to put over the laptop. Right, so I'm just moving things a bit so people can see. So yeah, let's have a look here. So what I'm going to be doing, let's have a look here. Place some of these out across here and here. Just to cover my ass just in case of static discharge. I doubt it's going to be an issue, but you never know. Static discharge can be an issue sometimes. You can wear an anti-static bracelet, or an anti-static band as they call it, if you're doing this type of work most of the time, but it's up to you individually. Put these down. Oops. Oh, they dropped on the ground. That's fucked. So any type of work you're doing, generally you do have to. It does help to have that stuff down, but stuff like electronics are not as sensitive as you think they are to anti-static discharge. I mean, they're sensitive, but they're not that sensitive. As long as you're not rubbing your hands on the carpet or something like that before you start, you should be fine. Let's see. So I'm just going to go through some of the stuff that, I mean, basically if you're taking anything apart, regardless. I don't know whether I'm going to strip this machine down. It is a single core machine. It's nothing fancy, but typically most of these types of machines, there's only a few screws on the hatch. Now some machines today, modern machines, don't have these little hatches for memory and stuff, unfortunately. So yeah, it's kind of sad. These aren't as common as they used to be. So, with this type of machine, this is a oh, fuck me, I need a drink of water, hold on. Typically, with these types of machines, you've got all different configurations, but this is a single core. You can actually see it, but I can't swing this around, can I? Can I swing this around? No, I can't. Okay. So that's alright. That is annoying. I have to work out my camera angles, but you can actually see that. But so typically with most of these machines, when you're exchanging or taking RAM out, normally flip it up, put it to the side, especially when you're changing around out or something like that. You can have anti-static bands. They're not required necessarily, but it does help the situation sometimes, especially if you're in a very highly carpeted area. So there's that. Now, that's typically if you're taking the memory in and out. I'll show you. But typically when you're taking the memory in and out, it's just popping those two little tabs there, typically. Now if you're working on taking the hard drive out or whatever, normally, depending on the machine, it's 2 screws. I'm going to put those on 2 other screws. I'll put them over here and I'll put them over there. No, wait a minute. That's right. This keeps this particular one. The screws actually stay in there, so they actually stay inside the actual cover. But if you're taking a hard drive out, for example, pull this out, and you magnetic tip screwdriver. Maybe not. Do I have a magnetic tip screwdriver? I don't know if I fucking have one. Yeah. Shit. There we go. So it screws out, you put them to the side like that. And then, sorry, I'm just grabbing one of these screws. It was in here. That was from another build that I did previously. So typically what you do, have one screwdriver at least has a magnetic tip on it, so it's easy to get the screws out. Pull the hard drive out like so. Depending on the situation, you'll normally slide out like that. Now, if it's an entire machine, if it's in one of the new machines, unfortunately with the new machines, what you have to do is take the entire back off the machine, typically, most of the time. It always helps to disconnect the battery. Now, I probably should have done that beforehand, but I'm pretty sure with static stuff, most of the time, as long as you're relatively careful and you're not stupid about rubbing your feet on the carpet or something like that, it shouldn't cause any problems with it, realistically. It is recommended that you do use an anti-static band, but it's not necessarily required. So what do we got? We've taken the battery out, the RAM out, and the hard drive. So typically with the hard drive, it normally has a couple of caddy screws in this area, so you unscrew those, and that's how you get your caddy off. It normally just slides straight out of the caddy once you do that, so this whole caddy comes out, so you take that out and pops out. This is just one of the older configuration of the machine, obviously, so a little easier to work with. Newer ones are a little more difficult, but not overly difficult. Unscrew it here, grab your magnetic tip screwdriver, and then place the screw over there like that. Then you can slide your DVD drive out like so. Bob's your uncle. So this is sort of some basic principle of disassembly or disassembling a machine. Now you can go the other route. You can take every screw out and you can actually undo the whole thing. There's other parts here too. I could take the CPU or heatsink off if I wanted to. I could strip the fan out if I chose to. Typically what you do if you're taking any type of heatsink or fan out is you'll take every screw on the system out. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So there's 11 screws in total that have to come out before the system will actually come apart. And I believe there's 2 screws up here at the top, right there. So typically for something like this, it's pretty easy to disassemble. I mean, it depends on whether you're going to reuse the parts or not. If you're going to reuse the parts like this or whatever, you know, depending on the situation, of course. But I know this machine is functional. I would say your best bet with most machines is just, you know, take your time, especially if you're working on them or doing particular things to them anyway. So what I'll do is I'll put this back in anyway for now. Now, depending on the machine, of course, and depending on the circumstance, there we go. Like that. Put this back in. These back in. Should use that one. That's one. Should be fine. So we'll screw this back in. And that one's shorter, so it goes to there. There's a normal screws that goes into this. Screw this back in. Screw this back in as well. Right, now, depending on the process with most of these machines, some machines can be really piss poor, simple to pull apart. It takes 2 seconds to do some of this stuff. Realistically, some of them are very easy and wonderful to work with. Yeah, they're absolutely awesome. That's the right side. Okay. That's alright. I'm putting that in the right way. I was just wondering whether I was doing something wrong there. What the fuck? Oh, okay. I may be wrong. There we go. That's alright. Got it. All good. On the spot. There we go. Click that in like place. Click it back into place like that. And there you go. Pretty much all the RAM's back in, everything else is back into the system. Now, you know, depending on the situation, of course, you probably prefer to leave your battery removed when you're doing a lot of this work. Typically. Let's screw that back on this. I'll screw the back on this. I just want to show you, like, depending on the machine. I mean, I don't know what the keyboard removal procedure is for this, but there we go. There we go. Put this back on. There we go. Crack that back into place. So, say for example you're removing the screen. The screen can probably be the hardest part depending on the situation. Typically what you do with removing the screen or the keyboard, so say for example you're going to remove this keyboard. Now, typically what will happen is there's a little slot here where you pop this up and that pops up at the same time. So you'll probably find that the 2 screws that are below the battery in the battery compartment there will help you remove this, because this may be screwed down ultimately. I don't know, I'm just suggesting as a point of reference to look for, but I'd say that's probably screwed down. What you do is you pop that off, you pop this part off, the power button and this section here and everything else, you take that off, and then you'd be able to remove your keyboard. I'd say most likely. Now that's a pretty easy keyboard replacement, but there's some fucking keyboard replacements that are an absolute fucking nightmare, because you might have to end up taking the whole fucking machine apart just to get the fucking keyboard out. It's an absolute pain in the ass to deal with those. I mean, it's not as if they're overly difficult, but they're not fucking overly easy either. So it's sort of in between. Now, as for the screen, so I'll give you an example of the screen. So here you see all these spots here. I'd say that there's probably lining screws and everything else. So what you normally have to do with the screen is get this plastic section off. So you normally get a prying tool, plastic prying tool in between it, and pry this plastic section off. And then there should be probably, say, 2 screws here, maybe 2 screws here, 2 screws here, a couple of screws across the top. And normally you'd be able to remove that screen and actually remove the section, take the screen out and everything else. The other thing you'll probably have to watch for is disconnect your webcam at the top of the screen, just to make sure that it's, say for example you do pry everything off and you take the screen off, the webcam is definitely going to be connected to your screen in that area, so there may be a cable going into that, depending on the situation. But yeah, I mean, typically with most things, it's pretty easy with most computers to remove stuff, but there's also computers I've had that have been an absolute nightmare to deal with. That's probably just the recent way that they're building them. I'd say they're building them to become more obsolete and less upgradable, which is an absolute pain in the ass when you're dealing with this stuff, you know, or it can be, depending on the situation, of course. But I mean, say for example, now the trackpad. If you're going to remove the trackpad, I'd say you probably have to strip the entire back of the computer off and come out from the other angle to get this trackpad out. Because I don't see any other way of removing that trackpad. Doesn't seem to be any. Like these 2 buttons here are related to the trackpad, so probably a few screws underneath here that unscrew the trackpad. I'd say definitely. There's an Intel Celeron, so it's nothing. It's not a fancy laptop by any means. I just like to point out to people that, you know, sometimes things can be. Sometimes things can seem simple on the surface, but they're not as simple as people think they are, you know, in certain circumstances, I guess. But alright, so I mean, the other stuff that's in there, the memory card reader and everything else and stuff like that, those types of things, I'd say you're required to take the whole thing off, and there's probably a cable connecting this, which has got front audio ports and everything else here. So you probably have to disconnect cables for that as well. Just watch out for those. So be careful when removing it that you don't damage anything. What else can I say? I don't know, generally, like with some laptops, they're really easy to work on. And the reason I like these ones is they're compartmentalized into memory, into certain sections with the CPU, heatsink, and everything else, and the fans. So, you know, typically, if you're replacing the fan in something like this, you'd have to remove the cable, probably remove the back of this whole machine. So, this section, plus this section, plus the battery, plus the hard drive, plus that. You probably have to remove everything out of the system before even getting into the system to get to that fan. Because that one fan would be that'd probably be the only thing that would be a bitch to replace if it failed. Not overly bitchy, but kind of bitchy, you know. So what else? Look, I guess in the end of it, when it comes to this stuff, I mean, I'm always constantly taking apart this stuff and putting it back together. So you know, it's relatively easy for somebody like me who does this stuff on a regular basis. But sometimes when you're dealing with this stuff, it can be a little bit annoying. Depending on if it's a newer model or if there's something in particular where the model's got screws that you don't necessarily see on the surface or something like that, it can be a bit of a pain in the ass to find certain screws. Not always, but sometimes, yeah. So I mean, this is just more of a point of reference for people who, you know, do regular stuff like that. Anyway, I don't know. I just like to point out to people that, you know, even though because some people have, I don't know, some people have turn around and claim that I don't know how to do. Well, not everybody, and this is my point. It's only people I know. It's only trollish fucking cunts that have been doing it. But I just wanted to point to people that I know how to fucking take things apart if I need to. Not just that, I know how to put them back together as well, and we get them working at the same time. I don't really take apart batteries, so I've never done that. I wouldn't recommend it just because of the lithium cells and stuff like that. If they're exposed to air, they can be highly explosive or flammable, highly flammable, I would say. So be careful with those batteries. I would not recommend disassembling a battery unless you know how to, unless you're actually a battery recycler and you have experience doing that, I wouldn't recommend it. What else? I guess the other thing too is, like I said, try to lay out your environment too a bit. Well, I've got anti-static bags here, for example. I've just put it like, try to make it as much of an anti-static environment as I can. Have a toolkit, something similar to this. If it's a different type of laptop, like a Mac, for example, and it uses certain type of screwdrivers, I'd recommend other different tools. There's also other tools like this, this tool is actually designed for picking up certain things like chips and stuff like that. It's the particular tool. It's like grabbing certain things. What is this? This is actually, yeah, that's more for like grabbing tools and stuff like that. Pair of pliers, just in case you need to get like if you have a stubborn standoff on a motherboard, this is awesome to have a pair of pliers with you. Have at least a few different types of screwdrivers. You have tweezers always help too, especially if you want to pick up things or do certain aspects of that. The other thing I would recommend as well is if you're really into soldering and stuff, and I'm not big on soldering, I prefer not to do it all the time, but always have some solder on you just in case. Doesn't hurt to have it. Doesn't hurt to have it around, just in case you want to use it. A soldering iron doesn't go astray either. Certain types of screwdrivers, like for example, your sort of Torque type screwdriver is always good. Phillips head will always get you out of trouble, and as I said, one of these. So you got a flat head and a Phillips head. So I'd say between those two, you'd probably be able to pretty much get most computers and stuff, depending on how old the computer is, apart. Now, if it is a more newer computer, or it's like a Macintosh, you're going to have to probably get yourself a Torque set of screwdrivers, I'd say. That'd be definitely the thing you'd have to do. So yeah. I'm just going to put that back in there. Put that in there. Put that in there. And there was just a couple of spare screws and stuff I had from other stuff anyway. But these are definitely some of the tools that you should consider when working on machines. There is also this, which is more designed for like when you're taking apart, like, stuff with bolts and stuff and things like that. So yeah, it's got like a bolt directly through it or something like that. You don't find that commonly in computers, but you do find it in a lot of different workshops with different things that bolt together, desks and stuff and things like that. So yeah, depends really, but varies in the situation. Right, I'm going to put this back here. Close this back up. But yeah, I mean, this is basically, the basic premise of taking something apart is fairly simple. I mean, diagnosing it is probably half the issue, especially when you're diagnosing problems or issues with computers. That can be the biggest issue, is diagnosing a problem in the first place. Fixing a problem, which can be the most pain in the ass thing that you find personally. Anyway, but see these little cover things, which are designed to be little plastic sheaves that go into those little holes and stuff. They're good to have, and they're good to keep on the laptop itself, just so no dirt or dust and stuff gets into the system. The other thing is blowing this out with an air compressor. So what you typically do is you run a fan through the vents here, and what you do is you take that out, all the memory out, the battery out, and you blow into the air compressor, or you get an air compressor and you blow in here. And what it does is it blows this dust in the surrounding area, but then you blow the dust around that area and sort of clear it out that way. But particularly if you're doing stuff, if you're working on something that has a dust or a heat issue, that's what I've found most of the time with most of this stuff anyway. But like I said, it varies with different ranges of this stuff. I mean, most of these computers are pretty, like this type of computer, relatively simple to take apart, but at the same time, you got to watch. Just be careful when you're taking it apart. You know, use a little finesse when doing it. Obviously, I mean, you don't have to be perfect, obviously, but as long as you use a little finesse and be careful, which I think is the main thing with all of this stuff. You just got to be careful with it. Have an anti-static environment of some type, whether it's bags like this or whatever. This is a bunch of bags that I ended up purchasing off eBay. Be able to do computers. So there we go. So I'm just going to put this away, but yeah, that's basically the premise of the whole thing. And just play it by ear, play it safe when you do this stuff. The general consensus is to be smart about it. As long as you're not stupid about it. That's the main thing. But, yeah, pretty much my whole premise on it. I'd say with most of this stuff, it helps to have a pair of glasses. If you don't have it's not just a pair of glasses actually, but another thing too, if you can't see the damage on a motherboard, for example, and you do have some issues with your eyes, like I do, get yourself a magnifying glass, because they're really good for seeing a lot of into the deep grooves, and not just that, but see if there's any damage on the motherboard, if there's damage to a capacitor on the motherboard, or something along those lines. Definitely check that stuff out, because you don't know whether there is damage without looking at it closely, and it always is an idea to check it closely just to make sure there isn't any damage on the system. But yeah, stuff like that. I don't know. Like I said, it's up to you ultimately. Is how is the way you do your repairs, but at the same time, I hope I'm giving people a pretty good key pointers to go through. I also have an entire list as well of stuff that I go through with all of this. So yeah. All right. Anyway, I'll leave it there for now. Thank you very much. Goodbye.